going and exploring all these small hidden communities. They're actually not that hidden, but most people are too afraid to kind of walk down these soils because they don't know where it's going to go. And for me, that's what I love. I love going into the unknown.
Welcome to the Crossroads Psychology video podcast. I'm Voicu Mihnea Simandan from Beijing. In this episode, we'll talk about photography, culture, yoga, and mindfulness. I'm joined today by Nick McGrath, a Bangkok-based photographer and journalist who has been exploring the cultures and subcultures of Southeast Asia for more than a decade. Thank you so much, Nick, for taking the time to sit down virtually and have a conversation with me.
Hi, Mina. It's a pleasure. It's great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have.
Perfect. So let's start by discussing your origin story. You've been in Thailand for so long, it's obvious that you have a true passion for Southeast Asia. So what is your origin story? How did you start loving Southeast Asia?
It's a long story. I'll try and keep it as short as possible. But I was working as a photographer in Australia. I'd actually changed careers. Previously, I was working in a different career, and I started working as a photographer for about a year, working for a newspaper. And I had a few things that were going on in my life at the time. That my mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and I'd literally gone through a fairly long, drawn-out divorce. And when that had finalized, I took a year off and I went traveling overseas. But when I came back, it was really difficult for me to find work. My networks had changed, and I found it really difficult to work. So I actually was a carer for my mother for 2 years. And then a friend of mine had sent me a message about another Australian photographer that was living and working here in Bangkok, and I really loved his work. I thought it was really amazing work, and I decided to come over here to do a workshop. And pretty much from then on, everything had changed for me. I had an amazing experience personally and also creatively as a photographer. I grew so much in a short amount of time. And when I went back to Australia, I couldn't get Asia out of my head. I had so many amazing experiences and met so many great people. I needed to come back. Felt like there was something here for me, but I didn't know what it was. And then eventually I was offered a job working as a photo editor for a magazine. And that was how my permanency began, living in Bangkok.
One of my favorite places in Bangkok is actually Chinatown. I think Chinatown provides such an authentic experience of what the business and the mercantile ethos of Southeast Asia is really about. So how do you see Bangkok's Chinatown from the perspective of a photographer, not of a tourist, right? Not of a long-time resident, but specifically from the point of view of a photographer?
I think first and foremost, I'm just a human being having this experience here, and I like to take photographs. So there's two things kind of happening at the same time. Actually, I don't know if I told you, but I live in Chinatown. I renovated a shop house here that kind of came to me unexpectedly when I was just beginning my life here, and because this was where I actually did my workshop. So my first experience of Bangkok was in Chinatown, and I just fell in love with the energy and the people and the chaos, everything. Like everything was confronting in some way, and as a photographer that was still learning, I don't think you ever stop learning, but learning in this new environment was just the most amazing place to challenge yourself. But yeah, I was very, very lucky to find a shop house which I renovated and did the interior design and made it all very, very beautiful. And of course that was the anchor for my whole experience living in Chinatown. And as a photographer, Chinatown's changed quite a bit, I think, from when I first come here. But what I loved was about going and exploring all these small hidden communities. They're actually not that hidden, but most people are too afraid to kind of walk down these sois because they don't know where it's going to go. And for me, that's what I love. I love going into the unknown and enjoying meeting people and having this experience where I can, get to learn about how people live and what people do, and being able to photograph it as well. Yeah, it's just a great experience. I love it very much, and I've been doing it for 10 years, 11 years now, and I still love doing it. It's a lot of fun.
I can totally connect with the chaos that you mentioned, but you also mentioned people so many times in your answer. So does this mean that in order to take a great photograph, the place and its people matter more than what camera you use? So is it the place, the photographer, or the camera that can give that final photo a special something?
I don't believe that the camera or the type of camera that you have has anything to do with it. It's an approach and a technique that maybe is a little bit different depending on the type of equipment that you have. So I'm completely unbiased about whether you're photographing with an iPhone or the most expensive digital camera in the world. I don't think it makes that much difference. But what my philosophy about photographing in the street, and the street is, it's street photography is just one type of photography that's out there. The thing that I love about it is that there's actually three things that are really happening. There's what's happening internally in yourself, how you're feeling, the kind of mood that you're in, whether you're in a good mood or a bad mood. There's a whole lot of different things that are going on that has an effect on the way you approach or you're experiencing the environment. And then there's the environment itself. Now the environment you can't control. Like you don't have there's no determination or anything over anything that's happening. And what I love about that, and that's part of the chaos too, is that there's this there's like a synchronicity that I think happens between yourself and the environment. And when you're in sync with both of yourself and the environment, I think you end up getting very good pictures. Part of that is the fact that photography is about being very aware of your surroundings, aware of what's going on. It's very grounding. It's very much in the present moment. And I love the fact that I can walk around. I never know what I'm going to photograph. I'm not particularly looking for anything in particular. It's just things that happen, meeting random people, going into places that are new, and especially for me, because I'm a foreigner that's living here, it helps me kind of understand my place in this world, and so that's what I love. And of course there's a paradox to all these things, but mostly the photography itself is not about the camera. It's more about yourself and how you relate to the environment and to people. And I think the more open you are, the more open in as far as letting go of some kind of there's a lot of things in your mind that happens that I think create some kind of boundaries that you can't get through, and it's an internal thing that goes on in your mind, and I love pushing through those things. For me, that's the thing that I really love the most.
I see. So you like to go with the flow, you like to encounter the unexpected. But when it comes to technique, do you use, since you're a professional photographer, do you use like a specific technique in setting up the camera or in setting up the frames, or do you have a special like signature style that you use? Or do you explore with both location and people and, I suppose, photography techniques?
I guess that, for example, if I'm working in a professional level, where maybe I have an editor, or there's some kind of assignment, or there's some kind of story or something that I have to kind of find visually, it's a different approach to just walking around the street and photographing. But what I find when things are happening in front of you, I don't know, like I have this instinctual nature that I think I've just developed, and I think a lot of photographers that are working probably understand this, that it's just doing it over and over and over again, and you get to a point where you're completely instinctual with what's happening in front of you. I photograph manually. I don't do anything in automatic because I have complete control over that. And that's how you can kind of create more of the idea of the self in the picture, as far as the feeling and capturing the mood or the essence of what's going on. So that, like with everything, you need to understand the technique and understand what you can get from the camera. And that doesn't matter with any camera you use. You still have to understand, what you can do with it manually. When I teach photography, I'm always within the first 5 minutes of people where I teach, I'm always putting them into manual mode and getting them to trying to erase their idea of what it's supposed to be, and then start from scratch. And it's really a lot of fun. I feel like I have a very simple technique where I remove the numbers, the aperture and the shutter speed, all these things, completely simplify it down to one specific use case that you can get in every camera, which is like using an exposure meter and just understanding how it moves. And once you understand that, you can actually start to get really good pictures really quickly. So yeah, the technique is important, but I think for me, photography is 10% about the camera, 90% is about you, and how you're experiencing the world.
So in that case, I want to ask you this. This is, I think, a pretty tough question, and I ask almost everyone I interview.
I like tough questions.
Good, because I'm a teacher. I teach psychology here in China, and I encourage all my students to go to college. But in the case of a young person who wants to become a professional photographer, who's passionate about photography, do you recommend they take a course, like a short-term course? Do you recommend they just self-teach themselves how to use the camera and how to approach photography? Or should they go into like a three-year college course?
It's a great question. Well, I mean, I studied photography, and I began when I was about 27. So it's kind of a bit late, to decide to change careers, so to speak, because before that I was working in a different industry. I was working in like a corporate industry, and I'd done a few other things, but I mean, that change, or that decision, okay, I'm just going to segue a bit, but the decision to go into the photography was about actually three things, and I think it's really important. And I'll get back to your question, Mina.
Sure, sure.
This was a real fundamental kind of change for me because I was really disillusioned in my life at the time. As I said, I was going through a lot of different changes, and I was a bit lost, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and it took me some time, I guess, in a way, to kind of meditate on these things, like what was really important for me, and I came up with three words. So the first thing was I had to be happy, and these three words are reciprocal as well. It's not just I'm getting something from. I'm not receiving it. I'm also having to give out this thing too. So I had to be happy, and I had to be passionate about whatever it was I wanted to do, and I had to be inspired. So these were really three key words that really determined my decision to get into photography. And because of my age, I kind of felt that maybe I needed to go through a proper course, which is what I did. I did an advanced diploma of photography at Photography College in Melbourne, and it was really good. But actually, the reason why I did it, because I thought there would and there was industry connections in that, and I think that was really important that I had access to industry connections. Because, like I was 27, 28, 29 by the time I finished. I'm not young, so there's a lot of risk in that. But I also had a lot of self-belief and determination in the fact that this is what I've chosen, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be successful because of those three words, which were kind of my foundational stones that were below me. And yeah, I was lucky because I worked really hard. I also got part-time work in a commercial studio where I learned other things and gained a network as well. I'm good at networking, so I know that that's a good skill that I have. But yeah, I felt that I needed to have a course that supported me in giving me like an institutional support and network. And it worked, like I qualified, and then basically through the school I got my first job working for a newspaper. So that was a really big step of confidence, and following through with my decisions, and like I had the dream job really that I felt. So I think for me, the going through an institution was really good. But I would also say that if you're very determined, if you love photography, if you want to learn about the world, if you have a passion about humanity, being connected, you have to be very, you have to have a lot of empathy. You have to have a lot of, you have to be very broad in your beliefs. You have to remove a lot of biases about things. But I think that for a young person, actually, if you have the energy and you have the self-determination, you can do it without going to school. Because at the end of the day, if you're willing to take the risk, right? And there's a lot of risks in, say, for example, in photojournalism, there's a lot of risks to a lot of, say, conflict work, for example. If you're willing to take those kinds of risks, and I'm not suggesting that's what you should do, but if you're willing to take all these risks, you will get there. But it takes a lot of work, and most importantly, it's the process of understanding your own kind of what you said before about your own signature or your own style. That takes a long time, and it took me, I think 6 years before I finally found that, the images that I was taking were really a connection through the mind and through the heart, through the eye kind of thing. And it's a nice feeling. It's really, really lovely when you get to that. So for young people, I think you can do it. You just have to you have to have a lot of self-belief. It's not a straight path. You'll have a lot of failures, but you'll learn from all of them. They're not failures. They might seem like mistakes, but actually mistakes are part of life, and you should accept them as opportunities for growth. And I really believe that. So, and I think that's just part of life as well. We shouldn't avoid these things.
And what's for sure, I believe there's no magic formula that you go and you learn in college about a technique and you just go out and set your camera and wait in the corner and then snap the best photo ever within a few minutes. So there's a lot of practice, and I think passion is also a big factor when it comes to having that desire to find that special angle that you feel you will tell your story of that photo.
Yeah. The experiences that you get from photography kind of, they can really get you into other aspects of life as well outside of photography. So what I mean like that is, you might come across, you're working and maybe you're doing a job on, say, homelessness, for example. There's a lot of homelessness in Chinatown. And, sometimes you can't be, you can't go in there and just take photos and then step out. I've got involved with people that I've met through photography that, I try to help them in some way. I'm not like the answer to all their problems, but, I think that there's a duty in some way, in some instances, to get involved with people, and I've had, and this is the thing, when you get involved in a situation where, for example, you're having someone tell you this story about, say, for example, I did an amazing story. It never got published, unfortunately. And this is one of the things, with photography, especially when you're starting out, you can have a really good idea. You can put a lot of effort and a lot of time in, and you can get a great result. And then you're like, well, who do I give this to? Is this, maybe it's for a magazine or for a newspaper, and you pitch it to them and you get rejected. This is very normal, and it's hard. It's very hard, when it happens, but that's just part of the industry. But I did a great story on a young girl who was who came over from Afghanistan and immigrated to Australia, and she ended up getting a visa. I met her through a friend of mine who was involved in an art gallery, and they were doing this exhibition of art that was from refugees. Basically, it was only refugees, so I thought it was really interesting, and I went to this exhibition, and the artwork was very interesting. But this one girl had done this amazing piece of artwork, and it basically was the story of her journey and her mother. Yeah, and just from that, I felt like, there's something there that I want to learn from, and maybe I could, help in telling her story if she wanted to. So I ended up meeting her, and they were lovely. I came round their first time. I met her and her mother at their home, and they made lunch. They were so generous. It was just like walking into another, a second family. They were just so generous and so honest, and the courage and the courage that she had in telling this story, which is heartbreaking. It was super heartbreaking to hear that, and this journey, and kind of an amazing story of trial and tribulation and overcoming, all these things. And also too, what I love about this kind of thing is the idea of, she didn't identify, the kind of what we would see as tragic circumstances or really difficult situations. She didn't identify herself as that. She kind of identified herself as a, she had overcome these things, and this was just part of this thing that unfortunately she had to go through, but it made her this amazing human being. And look, I just became friends with them, and I would go and have lunch with them often. And you have to be a human being. You can't just step in and out of these things. If you really have a conviction. And sometimes there's things that you can't do as well. So it's just part of that experience. But I think even in Chinatown, during COVID, where I live, it was very depressing. There was so many homeless people here, and they were all struggling. And I have an Instagram account, which is I just photograph with my phone, so I don't use a normal camera because I'm kind of, it's all about photography. I'm not interested in the process of, taking a digital camera, taking the image, resizing it, doing all this production. That kind of sounds like work to me. I just want to get a good quality image out of my camera, and I upload it to the Instagram. And it's a visual diary, and I've been doing it, for the last 5 years. But during COVID, I actually stopped photographing because I don't know. I mean, it was so depressing. I mean, we're all having our unique experience and coping with this situation. But to see, a lot of these people that were just really, really helpless, that had no support, I didn't want to photograph it. I mean, I've photographed it before because it's a part of the what I see in the area, but it was too much. So, there's times where, you just don't want to pick up the camera as well. And that's fine.
You mentioned quite a few times that mistakes is part of the journey. And on your blog, you discuss how a mistake in photography can actually lead to something beautiful. And you called it the beautiful mistake. Can you elaborate a bit?
Yeah, I love.
What's the beautiful mistake in photography?
The beautiful mistake. All right. So normally, when you're photographing, there's some kind of intention. There might be a desire, or you might have some preconceived idea about something. And again, a lot of this stuff is just in your mind. But when it comes to photographing, it doesn't happen. So you have this one way of looking at things where you try to put some intention into something and it doesn't work. On the other hand, I like the unintentional consequence of photography and really letting go, and I think this happens quite a lot, and I think a lot of the times actually it's through these trial and errors of using your camera and getting out of your comfort zone of, say, the automatic modes, and just throwing yourself into the unknown and just trying stuff. And sometimes you actually can get really nice things unintentionally. And then you go, well, hang on, I got to re-engineer, go back. How did I do that? What happened, right? So I guess the beautiful mistake is really about, letting go, and not having too much imposition in your what you're doing with the camera. Being a little bit free in your mind to just try different things and find the unexpected result. The reason why I wrote that blog, because I was at the Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon. I can't remember, it was maybe 2016. And I've been there many times. I haven't actually, that was the first time I'd been to the Shwedagon Pagoda, which is a very, very beautiful place. And, when you've been to all these, if you've been to different spiritual places in the world, no matter what you believe in, there's this sense of awe, or, you can,
Totally.
there's something there. You don't necessarily need to know or understand what it is, but there's certainly something there, that has a powerful kind of effect. And even though I'd been there many, many times to Yangon, I hadn't purposely hadn't gone to Shwedagon Pagoda, even though it's a very unique place to photograph. Yeah, but I got invited. I met this monk on the street, just randomly. And this is how a lot of things happen for me. They're just random occurrences and meetings. And I met this young monk who spoke really good English, and he was just a really interesting guy to talk to. And he invited me to go up there, and I thought, well, this is the perfect time. This is the time to go, right? I'm being invited. And so he took me there, and it was a Sunday. It was really beautiful. It was a very busy day, evening, and the light, just spectacular. And I couldn't capture the thing that I was feeling in the camera. I guess that was the frustration. It was just, it was impossible for me to do that. And I was, I think I was a little bit upset, actually. I was like, I just can't do this. And I gave up, and I sat next to him on the floor. There's a big tile floor. And people are doing circles around the pagoda, so they do 3 anti-clockwise.
Their prayers.
Yeah, they're doing their prayers. And it had just gone into dusk, and I just sat there, and I wasn't even thinking, and I just started taking pictures without any thought. I don't even know that, I can't even remember what the camera setting was, but I think it was not something that I had planned. I might have attempted something and it didn't work, and then I gave up. But anyway, I just started moving the camera with the people that were walking, and I just started shooting. Wasn't looking at I wasn't, even though, this is a bad habit, is like taking a picture and looking at the back of the camera straight away. Don't do that. I just started taking these pictures, and then I just looked at them and I thought, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And I thought, wow, that was not what I expected. I had no intention at all. And then, so the beautiful mistake is really making the mistake and then seeing something very special and interesting, and then replicating it. And then from that, I just kept doing it all night, and then kind of pushed it a little bit further. And for me, that maybe they're not great images, maybe they're not world-class images, but for me it kind of represented the feeling and the mood, the dynamics and the energy. I feel like I didn't capture the Shwedagon, but I captured the energy surrounding it. And so that was for me, that was a beautiful mistake. And the idea of there's different processes that you can go through. This is a wonderful thing about photography, is you can there's you can do a lot of trial and error and try different things in different situations, different environments and contexts, and there's not really one single approach for anything. And that's what I love about it.
It's very obvious to me that you're deeply in love and passionate with the culture in Southeast Asia. But what do you think, in this globalized world, do you think Southeast Asia in general, and Thailand maybe in particular, have maintained or will be able to maintain their cultural peculiarities?
That's such a difficult question. I'm afraid to answer. I have an opinion on it, actually.
What is your opinion?
Well, I live in Chinatown, okay, so it's not the usual expat experience of living in Bangkok. I only know four other expats that live in Chinatown, like in a shop house type of environment, living in the community, living on the ground. And that was actually very important to me. I coming from Australia, where we have a large area and a lot of space, the idea of living in a condo kind of gave me fear. But if you think about all culture, like now, everywhere in the world, there's this mass global social media. And I think a lot of the youth of today, and this is not specific to Thailand, but I think it pretty much covers just about everywhere in the world, is that with like Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all these other social media platforms, it's kind of a homogenization of culture everywhere. So maybe the aspirations of youth, or the ideas that it's being sold to these young kids, which is all fake, of course. It's not real. I worry a lot about that effect on them. Specifically, like say in the community or the small area where I live. When I moved here, there was actually nothing here. When I mean nothing, there was ordinary commerce. I live in the herb and spice district, so it has this wonderful smell year round in the soy. It's just got this fantastic energy and vibe. Well, let me say that now there's about 10 bars around my very small area, so it's completely changed. What I wonder about is that some of the I'm not negative into these, because some of these people have come up with really creative ideas and done nice things with respect to the building, for example, keeping the kind of the historical or heritage or the character of the building. Some have not, also, but the idea of a cultural reference to, say, a modern business like a bar, for example, and there's a whole bunch of bars around here. They could be the same from anywhere in the world. What I and again, this for me is a homogenization of culture. I like it when people, like local people here, are creating a new business, for example, and they're taking aspects of their own story or their family story and putting it into that business. So for me, that's very interesting. As an Australian living in Thailand, I feel like I've lost my idea of original identity. I'm a citizen of the world. I've experienced so many different things, and my ideas my philosophy is very different to, say, whatever it was maybe 20 or 30 years ago. The pressures on youth culture are very, very strong, and I just think it's not just a place. It's not just in Thailand. These are effects that are happening everywhere in the world. What I believe is this homogenization, this kind of globalization of culture. But at the same time, there are battles taking place in Chinatown. Like Chinatown has gone through radical changes since I've been here, and I've only been here 10 years, so it's not really that long anymore. Only 10 years, yeah.
Let's put it this way, a decade.
Yeah.
Is it only now if we say a decade?
A decade, yeah, my God, Actually, I've just become friends with a guy. He's roughly around the same age as me, and he grew up in the neighborhood. So when he was a kid, he actually grew up in the area that I now live in, and it's been amazing to hang out with him and listen to his stories and fill me with these images of what it used to be like. And I mean, yeah, it's changed quite a lot, that's for sure. But I think one thing about Chinatown is it has this amazing historical and heritage value that I still don't think the powers that be, or maybe the corporations that can buy out these neighborhoods, which they still don't understand the significance of how important it is to maintain and keep it, and to kind of develop it in a sympathetic way. It's a little bit different to how we kind of understand the way things work in the Western world. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered
it.
your question, but
Yes, you did. I think I also believe that there's a lot of interference, but there will always be a Chinatown in Bangkok. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah. I mean, like me being here has had a huge. I know I've had a huge effect in some way by being here. I'm an anomaly in some regards. People are so surprised that there's a foreigner living
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
The impact. I co-founded a gallery space actually in 2017 in the area, and I co-founded it with a few other people, and we wanted to. First off, we kind of felt like we knew that there was already some kind of pressure on, change or business wanting to development basically. And so we took a beautiful old shop house on a corner shop house, painted it up, and I used to do like curatorial photography screenings and exhibitions and book launches, and in one way it was about because by the fact that I was living here, I knew that there was already an impact that was going to come. But I don't want to get. I don't want to make it like I'm the only one, because there was a lot of people before me. Yeah, we did a lot of great things there, and I actually got interviewed by one of the main TV channels, and they were like curious as to why a foreigner was living in Chinatown and doing this thing. And at the time it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is great. I want to tell my story. I want to tell people why I live here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that aired on the national news on the Sunday, and then the next day there was a whole bunch of people in the street looking for places to rent. So that's kind of how quickly it changed. And yeah, I had no idea that it would become how it is today. And to be honest, it's not a positive or a negative thing. It's just what it is. But I'm really grateful that I've had the opportunity to live here and to experience the things that I have. I'm so lucky, and I wouldn't change anything.
You have also documented in quite some detail the Chinese opera culture practice in Thailand. So what was it that piqued your interest in this particular form of art and entertainment?
I never knew that I was going to enjoy Chinese opera. I had no idea. But actually, I remember the first photo. I don't know if I have it here. I actually have it up on behind me. But I remember the first photograph that I took. It's just on the wall behind me. But I was actually heading out on an all-night project working with the first responders in Bangkok, and I had to meet them at this like a temple in Chinatown. And while I was waiting for the people to pick me up, I was going out with another photographer. I was waiting for him. There was a tent near the temple, and there was a music, and I was like, oh, what's going on over here? And so I walked around and I saw this opera and I saw this performance, and then I thought, oh, what's going on behind in the back? And I didn't know if I was allowed to be there or not. I still, I didn't really know anything, but I just put myself into these situations. I'm happy to do that because people are going to tell me to move or get out. So I just put myself in there anyway and see what happens. But I remember seeing this wonderful beautiful Chinese empress, in all this really beautiful wardrobe, and she's wearing this beautiful green hat, and it's just incredible. And I just took a picture through this crack in the tent, and then I ran back, and then I had to go off with these guys. And then when we were driving, I was looking at the picture going, holy wow, that's beautiful. I couldn't believe it. It's one of my most favourite pictures, and it's the first picture I ever took. So I had to come back and, just discover what this thing is all about. Obviously, performers in general love to be photographed. So it's really, really easy, actually, to photograph these people. And the best fun or the best photography is actually backstage. Now, in our world, we would never just walk backstage into any performance because we kind of know that's off limits. But here, nothing's really off limits.
Was it like an open stage anyway, right?
Yeah. But once you realise, there's nothing is off limits here. You can just about do anything to a certain degree. So I just walked into the back of the stage, smiled, like, yeah, I'm here. Are you going to kick me out? No, you're not. You're laughing, you're smiling, I'm taking your picture. And the next, I'm really hooked into this pomp and ceremony and performance, and the colours and the characters. These operas go for 4 hours. I don't think I've ever been to one for a full performance. I'm not that dedicated. but it's...
And it was in Thai too, right?
Yeah, well, it's actually in...
And it's like it's a singer-song, right?
Actually,
it's melodic.
They speak... so in Chinese, they call it New, and I forget the dialect. So they're actually speaking a Chinese dialect. Forgive me, I'm probably going to say it wrong. It's like Tiju or something like that. This is something that will, I think, eventually die out. The way it was supported in the past, I think there's a lot of people, like a lot of the older generation, have disappeared. They do say that even if there's nobody watching the performance, they're still performing for the spirits. So I like that. I've been photographing it for a long time, and I've photographed many, many different troupes from different levels, I like everything.
Visually appealing too.
It's visually appealing. It's really colourful, and if I'm teaching and I'm doing a workshop with someone and there's an opera on, I always take them. I'm always pushing people's limits because that's where people learn. And the opera is a fantastic, unforgettable experience, especially for people that haven't done that kind of thing before. So I love it when these operas are in town, especially when I'm teaching, because I love to I never tell them what I'm going to do. I always surprise them, and they're like, "Oh my, am I going to do that? Yes, you are. Come on, off you go." And it's really great.
Yes, amazing experiences. I like to change a bit the focus of our dialogue here.
Sure.
Before COVID, a few years ago, I was in Sydney, and then obviously I went to Bondi Beach, and of course I saw the surfers.
Oh, yeah.
And then I know that you've also used to be a surfer, like every other Australian that I've met. but then something happened and you started practicing yoga. Let's talk a bit about your experience with yoga.
Okay.
And maybe how you got into yoga.
So I started surfing when I was 13, and I think I stopped surfing. I can't believe I did that, but I stopped surfing around 37. So surfing was a huge part of my life. When I was 17 or 18, I had an injury, a surfing injury, and for about 2 weeks I really couldn't walk. I had like a constant sciatica down my spine. I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I was in a lot of pain, and obviously went to I went to a couple of doctors. I went to a chiropractor, and they didn't do any manipulation on me. I was too scared, but they basically told me that I wasn't going to be able to surf again, and that was a huge red flag for me, because I just knew that wasn't going to happen. It was an unthinkable thing. I had found out about a yoga teacher that was doing some yoga near where I live, and I can still, photographers have a visual memory. I can still see exactly to this day when I came out of that first session, and I felt like I was stoned. Actually, that was how I described it. And I remember looking out over the football field and looking at the sky. It was a sunset sky and the ocean in the background, and I was so peaceful. I didn't quite understand what had happened. So I became a very dedicated student to my yoga teacher, who I practiced with for about 15 years.
Wow.
And I was very deep into it. I would practice, 3 or 4 times. I wouldn't practice every day, but I would practice. So sometimes I'd practice every day, but I was going to instructions twice a week. I was doing special classes with her. I was doing my own practice as well. But the physical benefits obviously were that I was able to go surfing again, which was great. But the idea of the mindfulness was something that I wasn't really even aware of. So this became, I was very, very dedicated with it for 15 years. This idea of, the benefits of meditation. And I was getting really, really deep into it, like insanely deep, philosophically. I was pushing myself through different breathing asanas. The amount of space that I could create between the in-breath and the out-breath, it was phenomenal. And I think maybe you should talk to people, these divers that hold their breath.
The pearl divers of Japan too.
Oh yeah, because I'm sure that would be fantastic. Because I'm sure they have the same experience. But yeah, this idea of space was incredible.
So what was your understanding of mindfulness at that time? How has it developed? What was mindful about it? What is mindfulness you through your yoga practice?
I think in the beginning, when you're like doing anything, but especially in yoga, you're in a raw state. Okay, you don't understand the subtleties, because like anything, to learn subtle things, it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice and a lot of experience. It's the idea of an asana or any type of yoga posture combines two things. There's a physical strength part, and then there's also a stretching part. And basically, imagine a seesaw that sits on a fulcrum, right? And what you're trying to do, in a sense, is like, for example, when you're in an asana where maybe you're stretching your joints or your muscles, and you're getting it to you're stretching to a point of pain, because it's through pain that you're, for example, not necessarily pain as in pain that hurts, but a process where you are releasing toxins, and there's an effect, I think, on the body and the brain with that. But there's a chemical and a physical thing happening, and so where the balance is where the mind is balanced with the physicality and there's this kind of harmony between both. And then when you're getting to the subtle areas of these asanas or these poses, is where you're pushing yourself in a very, very small degree, and you're using your breath to control the movement.
Thank you for sharing this great experience. And I do think that mindfulness is a great practice that has tons and tons of benefits.
Yeah.
Before we end our dialogue, what advice do you have as a father for new fathers?
Follow your instincts. It's instinctual, I think, to be a dad or to be a parent. Worries and anxieties about your child, I think they're very natural, and we do have them, but they're not necessarily real. So, the anxieties, and they have a powerful force in how you create your perception and reality of things. And yeah, I think about being very instinctual and try to be really grounded in the present moment. I mean, I this is how I try to live. Everything I try to do. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing. Is it right or wrong? But I don't really care. I just do it because I believe in it. And if it's wrong, well, maybe it was the best of the worst decisions.
Follow your instincts as a father, I think, and as parents, we do have an instinct to be parents. Be grounded in your beliefs and in what you do. And also, I do believe that there's a lot of anxiety that it gets passed on from parents to children.
Yeah.
And if parents are less anxious, then our kids will be less anxious too.
I'd love to, can I just quickly share one little story before we might leave? But this was a very, very powerful moment for me. I remember a photo of me when my father is holding me in his arms when I was a baby, and I'm wearing nappies and I have his work hat on, and he's with his colleague holding his daughter, another baby, right underneath the car park, the roof of the car at his house. And so the strange thing is, I don't know if it's actually real or a constructed memory, but I remember, supposedly I remember having a conversation with this baby going, why is it that they don't understand us, right? Don't ask me why I have this memory, but it stuck with me, and it came back to me when I became a dad. And so when my son was about, 5-6 months, he wasn't spitting out any words, but he was Googling and gargling, and you could see that he had, he was paying attention to things. I would tell him a story. I had a whole bunch of pictures on my wall, and every day I would tell him the story of all these pictures, right? So it was a narrative, and I did it very often, very, very often. And then one day I thought, why am I doing this? Do I believe that he can understand me? And if so, then how do I prove that? So I said to him one day, I told him the story, and I went through every picture in my arm, and I said to him, Paddy, which picture is your favourite? I'm talking to him like an adult. I'm not talking to him like a baby. I'm talking to him like he understands me, or I believe he understands me. And so I asked him the question, and I couldn't believe it, but he turned his head and looked at every picture and then pointed to one. And I was, I was just couldn't believe it. And ever since that moment, I just was like, you know what, I'm going to talk to him like he understands me. Okay?
Exactly.
And I think it's been really, really good. I think it's been really, really good. And read to your babies, like even before they can talk, just read to them. I have to read like 3 books a night sometimes. Being a dad is the best thing in the world. And, actually being a dad was really finally understanding what it was like to be a son, actually. So it was this amazing full circle of feelings and
Of
emotions.
life
Yeah,
and of
yeah, it
life.
was really amazing. So yeah, it's a fantastic experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nick, for taking the time to sit down with me and have this chat, this dialogue. You're in Bangkok. I lived in Thailand for 16 years. Now I'm in Beijing, but
Yeah,
it's great to be able to reach out to people and continue having this connection with Southeast Asia and with people like you who like art and who like culture and who have a deep understanding of the world around them. Thank you so much one more time.
thank you very much, Mina. It's been a pleasure, and I love what you do, and been watching all your other videos since you got in touch with me, and I just think you're doing a really great thing, and I wish you all the best too, and hopefully I'll get to see you in Bangkok one day.
Sure, sure. Yes, I'll totally visit you in Chinatown.
Great, you're more than welcome.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Mina. Bye bye.